Joining us now is Roger Stone. Welcome, Roger.
Great to be here.
Okay, tell us what is coming. Well, first, before we do that, let's talk about what happened yesterday with the guerrilla marketing that we saw there on Fox News. That was an amazing piece right there, and I think that tells us a lot about the power of the mass public in terms of the awakening of people and also getting this information out to people in unusual ways. I think that was very effective. What's your take on that?
What it shows, David, is that one person can make a difference.
Yes.
The mainstream media wants to obliterate the narrative about Bill Clinton and his sexual predator nature, the fact that he has sexually assaulted or bitten or raped or exposed himself to at least 13 women that we know of, and that his wife, Hillary Clinton, has been an accessory after the fact in every one of those assaults, because she is the one who intimidates, threatens, discredits, and bullies his victims. In the case of Juanita Broderick, a very brave lady, she intimidated Juanita to her face. Now, the mainstream media hates this narrative, and therefore they want to transpose it into affairs. You know, Bill's marriage. This has nothing to do with affairs or his marriage. It is not about marital infidelity. It is not about adultery. It is not about girlfriends or mistresses or one-night stands or what my friends in Philadelphia call the guma. It's about sexual assault. It's about violence against women. And for example, Michael Smerconish of CNN has a lively Saturday show. I've been on the show a number of times. Michael's a very smart guy, a longtime associate and friend of mine. In fact, he was once the right-hand man to Philadelphia Mayor Frank Rizzo. I got him a position as a high-level appointee in the Reagan administration, where he was the regional administrator for housing and urban development, a job from which he was ultimately fired because he could not follow directions. It's not that Michael has a lot of enemies. It's just that all of his friends hate him. In any event, yesterday on CNN, when a surrogate for Donald Trump began to discuss Bill's epic sexual abuse of women, Michael kept referring to it as infidelities and, you know, about his marriage. This is intellectually dishonest. Now, Michael Smerconish is a lawyer. In fact, he's a very fine lawyer, and he knows the difference between infidelity and rape. If he doesn't, he should refresh himself on the rape statutes in Pennsylvania state law. So this is a phony narrative put forward by the mainstream media. This is why it's important that people who support the cause, who are enlisted in the info war, get on the media and take up Alex Jones's challenge to get on television wearing your rape T-shirt, your iconic Bill Clinton rape T-shirt, written about in Time magazine, available at the Infowars.com store, available at the StoneColdTruth.com store. And by the way, Alex and I have agreed to donate a portion of the proceeds to a rape crisis center. But it's important that people take Alex up on this challenge. The mainstream media is not going to report this honestly.
Oh, absolutely. You know, you go back and you look at what happened in the 1990s and the impeachment of Bill Clinton. And the impeachment technically was for committing perjury. And I've tried to explain that many times to my liberal friends. They say, oh, they just went after him because he had an affair. Everybody has affairs, so forth and so on. They always make it about consensual sex, not about the sexual assault, not about the rape. They've always covered that up. That's one of the reasons why they focus so heavily on Monica Lewinsky, because that was a consensual issue. But they would completely avoid Juanita Broderick or Kathleen Willey or all these other women that you mentioned, 13 or so women that that have come out and said that they were raped by him without consent. And that's a huge difference there. But that's why we have the rape T-shirt. That is the point that needs to be driven home. It is not about consensual sex. It is not about some guy who's a philanderer. You know, my friends will also look at this and say, oh, well, yeah, he's a real stud. It's very, he may be a philanderer, but, all these women really love him, and it makes him even cooler in their eyes. And yet it's about rape. That's why we put that there. It is about rape. It is about the abuse of women. And the fact that Hillary Clinton joined in with him in cold blood. You could say that what she did, I think, is even worse than what Bill Clinton did. I mean, you could, what she did was completely cold-blooded. You can't even say that it was a crime of passion at any sense. And I'm not saying that rape is excusable because some guy is passionate about it. But I'm saying that what she did was simply from a cold political perspective, damaging these women, as many of them have said, in a way that was lasting beyond the physical abuse even that Bill Clinton did. The fact that Juanita Broderick says she can't get over the fact that she was raped, and she was only, she was actually a year younger than Chelsea Clinton is today. So put that in perspective as Donald Trump kind of pulled back and said, I don't want to talk about this with Chelsea. Chelsea's a year older than Juanita Broderick was when she was raped. That never goes away for her, but it also never goes away for her the fact that she was threatened to her face by Hillary Clinton.
Well, and she was bitten twice. This is Bill's MO. At least 3 women, confirmed by NBC's Mike Isikoff and confirmed by the Washington Post, that he bites through the upper lip of his victims. It's a very common disabling move for rapists. Now, I understand that the mainstream media doesn't want to talk about this. Sam Stein at the Huffington Post has a piece up now in which he talks about the last person who brought up Bill's affairs. Now, Stein's a nice enough fellow, but this is intellectually dishonest. The issue here has nothing to do with consensual sex, whether it is Juanita Broderick or Kathleen Willey or Paula Jones or Christy Zurcher or Sandra Allen James or Liz Ward Grayson, although she changed her story after she was given a bit part by a Clinton crony in Hollywood. These women were all sexually assaulted. What could be more politically incorrect than sexual assault and violence against women? That is the issue here. But this
he gets a free pass. They get a free pass for this because Hillary is a woman. Isn't that ironic?
Although I must say it was a misstep for Donald Trump to post last week that he was considering inviting Jennifer Flowers to sit in the front row. Wrong metaphor.
Yes.
Jennifer Flowers has a 12-year consensual relationship with Bill Clinton. Now, it is true that 3 Arkansas state troopers burst into the apartment of her next-door neighbor, Gary Johnson, an attorney, and beat him so badly they leave him for dead because he unfortunately has witnessed Bill coming and going with his own key to Jennifer Flowers' apartment. So we still have cold-blooded violence on the part of the Clintons. No, I urge those who understand this issue and who are engaged in this great struggle to take Alex Jones up on his challenge. If you can appear on television for a few seconds and clearly display the rape T-shirt, he will pay you $1,000. If you can do so with a bullhorn and say Bill Clinton is a rapist, he will pay you $5,000. And I spoke to him earlier today. This does not have to be network television. If you get on television in Philadelphia or Cleveland or Detroit and we see it, then you can qualify. But
all right, we got to go to break, Roger. When we come back, we're going to talk to Roger Stone about what's coming up on Wednesday.
Let's wrap up our discussion of the important Clinton T-shirt project, because I must say this. Do not break the law. Do not break and enter a TV studio. We want you to do this in a legal way. When the TV cameras are outside, when there's an open shot, and you see it all the time at Trump rallies, particularly at Clinton rallies, at Bill Clinton's rallies, then that is the time to strike. Very, very soon, we're going to be unveiling our next important product, the Bill Clinton Rape Whistle, which you will be able to buy at Infowars.com or at StoneColdTruth.com. So if you hear that Bill Clinton is coming to town, get your Bill Clinton rape whistle to greet him. Hundreds of people blowing their rape whistles cannot be ignored by the mainstream media.
Absolutely. And, Roger, when we look at this, I think it's important people understand, just like the Hillary for Prison T-shirt, People have to understand that it's not mistakes. It's multiple felonies. That's why we have the Hillary for Clinton T-shirt. And, that's only, by the way, that's only going to go for another 30 days. It's going to become a collector's item. You can find that at Infowars.com. That supports our operation, just like the rape T-shirt supports our operation and supports this marketing campaign to get the truth out. Because just like it's not a mistake, it's multiple felonies. It is not consensual sex. It is multiple rapes. That's why we have the T-shirt. That's why we have the campaign to drill that into people, because the mainstream media is trying to spin this constantly. They've been doing it for the last 25 years, telling people, oh, this is just an affair. He's actually pretty cool and nothing to see. Move on. Okay, that's what they're saying. But I want to get to the what you tweeted out today about Wednesday. What's going to happen on Wednesday that's going to end the Hillary Clinton campaign?
Well, I think it's important, David, to set the table. As you know, earlier this week, Congressman Jerry Nadler, a left-wing corpulent Democrat from Manhattan, called on the FBI director to open an investigation into Roger Stone and his connections to WikiLeaks.
Yeah, McCarthyism.
It's the new McCarthyism.
Yeah.
Joe McCarthy, Roy Cohn, Jerry Nadler. It's a matched set of witch hunt. I have been completely forthright here and in other interviews that Assange is, in my view, a hero. He does not work for the Russians. Let me repeat that. He does not work for the Russians. There's no evidence to the contrary. He is fighting the deep state. He has leaked documents equally embarrassing to the Bush regime, and liberals loved him then. But now you see an online effort funded by Soros, run by the money laundering criminal David Brock, to discredit Assange. I actually saw a tweet saying, oh, Assange's, whatever he releases will be fake. No, whatever he releases will be real. Now, an intermediary met with him in London recently, who is a friend of mine and a friend of his, a believer in freedom. And I am assured that the mother lode is coming Wednesday. It wouldn't be an October surprise if I told you what it was, but I have reason to believe that it is devastating, because people with political judgment who are aware of the subject matter tell me this. So right now you see a terrible scrambling by the Clintonites to attempt to discredit Assange to try to soften the blow. I have said from the beginning that I believe that Mr. Assange has all of the emails that the Clinton hench women, Huma Abedin, who, by the way, was partying with Barbara Bush this weekend in Paris. That must have been quite a party, proving that the Bushes and Clintons are together in a crime syndicate.
That's right.
And Cheryl Mills, they thought they destroyed all these emails. They thought they were deleted. Bad news. WikiLeaks has them all. It's handcuff time, because herein lies the proof of the criminality of the Clintons. Now, we've seen disinformation in the last 24 hours saying that Assange has postponed this, he's moved. I do know this. He does fear for his life, and he should. Right now, the globalists and the Clintonites are trying to figure out how to kill him. We know that a man broke into the Ecuadorian embassy and got as far as the second floor before he was detained, but it took the London police almost 2 hours to respond to the call for help.
Even though they have a cordon around the Ecuadorian embassy, they've spent millions of dollars to try to keep Julian Assange imprisoned there. It took them 2 hours to respond to this, as they were notified they had a break-in.
In 1969, Bill Clinton was expelled from Oxford for raping 19-year-old Eileen Wellstone. Read about this and every one of his crimes against women. The Clintons' War on Women. In stores now.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and we're talking to Roger Stone. Today, he mentioned that Wednesday was going to be the date for WikiLeaks to release the documents they had on Hillary Clinton. Remember, Julian Assange has been saying for a long time there was going to be an October surprise. It was going to be very damaging to Hillary Clinton. It was going to be the end of Hillary Clinton. So much information was going to come out that to expose her. And I get very concerned, Roger, when I see this. We talk all the time about the clear and present danger to Donald Trump's life when he rises in the polls. And, of course, we've seen other instances where we had Andrew Breitbart saying had some major revelations that were going to come out, and the day before that happened, he died. I've been concerned for a very long time about Julian Assange safety. As we went to the break, you were talking about how there was an intruder at the Ecuadorian embassy where he's been essentially cordoned by London police. They've spent millions of dollars over the years to keep him imprisoned in that embassy. I know they wouldn't take 2 hours to respond if Julian Assange began to leave that embassy, but they took more than 2 hours, even though they're posted right outside the embassy, as you can just see in that picture there. Even though they're posted right outside there permanently, they took over 2 hours to respond to the fact that there was an intruder there. So I'm very concerned about it, especially the early report said that Julian Assange was going to make the announcement from the balcony at the Ecuadorian embassy. I mean, that sounds like a Martin Luther King moment to me.
Yeah, I think that that they should rethink that because he is more valuable to the movement alive.
Yeah.
Look, I don't want to overstate this because I know that my critics are watching. I don't control Assange. And nobody does. He is his own man, and he is committed to fighting the deep state. And he may change his mind about what to put out and when to put it out. But my very best intelligence from a mutual friend who has spoken to him in London is that the mother lode is about to come, and it will be extraordinarily damning to the Clintons. That's why you see this extraordinary panic and why you see the media now wanting to talk about Donald Trump's taxes. Now, there's a huge difference between tax avoidance and tax fraud.
Yeah.
Donald Trump took advantage of tax laws passed by Republicans and Democrats together and paid his fair share under the law. If he didn't take the deductions, then he's too dumb to be president, and I don't want him to be president.
That's right.
I want a president.
Or he would be like Hillary Clinton, who has the legal firm where Comey and Loretta Lynch were setting on were partners at the law firm. They used to do the taxes for the Clintons, so they put out a nice, neat package of taxes and then launder massive amounts of money through their foundations and their network of institutions that they've got going there. That's the way they play it. And we can't see that information from the Clinton Foundation. Absolutely. When you've got that, it's no different than taking a mortgage deduction. I mean, you want to try to minimize your taxes. That's what everybody does if they got half a brain. You want to try to minimize your taxes. They're not saying that he did anything illegal, but they're trying to say that it's a bad deal if he doesn't pay taxes. You've got people like Warren Buffett saying, oh, it's a crime that my tax rate is lower than my secretary's rate or whatever. Well, he could always pay more taxes, but that's virtue signaling from him, from Hillary Clinton, from the New York Times, even though New York Times did the exact same thing. They didn't pay any taxes, and I don't know if what they did to get. I read the statement that they put out about how and it was very legalistic. I don't know what they did to get $3 million back when they had a profit of $30 million, but that's the way the New York Times plays it. But then they criticized Donald Trump for doing the same thing.
Yeah, you got to wonder whether they pass some of those tax savings on to the Mexican billionaire Carlos Slim, who owns a majority interest in the New York Times and who is, of course, the single largest donor to the Clinton Foundation Ponzi scam. So it is, look, I don't want a president who pays more than he is required to. This is the guy I want in charge of the federal treasury, somebody who counts every dollar, somebody who is not beholden to special interests and therefore could actually cut waste. If you're paying the government more than you're legally required to, as I say, you're too dumb to be president of the United States. Well,
it's an effort to try to get people to pay attention to Donald Trump's taxes and not to their own taxes. Donald Trump has put out the largest tax decrease that any president has ever proposed, larger than Reagan's tax decreases. And yet Hillary Clinton wants to raise taxes on everyone, from the poorest to the richest. She brags about how she's going to put a death tax of 45 to 65% on people as an estate tax, a death tax. That's going to devastate small businesses. It's going to devastate small farms. They don't have the corporate lawyers to fight these kind of reevaluations, and she's going to go up on taxes for everybody. She's bragging about that. The highest tax rates we've had since Ronald Reagan came in, she wants to reinstitute. They don't want people to see that. They want people to buy into this politics of envy and get upset about the fact that Donald Trump took legal tax deductions.
Yeah, this is what my friend Lionel calls the rodeo clown media. So in other words, don't look at the massive theft and corruption of the Clinton Foundation. Look over here at Donald Trump taking perfectly legal tax deductions over losses that he had.
Yeah.
It is really pathetic. By the way, I think it will have very little effect. Now the great question about Trump's taxes has been answered. So it's time for Hillary to release all the emails.
Yeah.
I mean, Trump's taxes are now out there. We know what the riddle is. It's time for Hillary to have the same kind of exposure, the same kind of disclosure. And if she doesn't do it, I'm convinced that Mr. Assange will do so.
You know, another place, Roger, where there's been a misdirection is on Cuba. Trying to get Florida, Hillary came out this last week and made some allegations that Donald Trump had tried to avoid sanctions in Cuba, ignoring the fact that it's been Hillary Clinton and the Obama administration that took down the sanctions that have been there since the 1960s against Cuba. That's the most amazing thing to me, and yet they have to do that because there's a massive Republican vote that is Cuban in Florida. So it is a purely political move, ignoring the hypocrisy of the felony violations that Obama just committed with the violation of Iran sanctions, sending plane loads of foreign currency on secret plane flights from Switzerland to Iran, in clear violation of his own declaration of Iran as being a terrorist state. Things that were actually felonies. Yeah.
Cubans that I know, Cuban Americans, my wife is a Cuban American. Her father was a diplomat under Batista who fled for his life because he was on a hit list. And the Central Intelligence Agency informed him shortly after he was to return for indoctrination in Cuba that he should not go back to his homeland. He lost everything in the Cuban Revolution. But Cubans that I know, and I know many, know that under the embargo lifting, that those who do business in Cuba cannot partner with local Cuban business people. They have to partner with the government. The government takes dollars, they give worthless pesos to the people, and they use the money to reinforce the secret police. Yeah. People still disappear in the middle of the night in Cuba. The Castro brothers are not some kind of romantic Robin Hoods. They are totalitarian thugs who oppress Christians and gays and women and anyone who disagrees with the communist rule.
And people are still fleeing that regime, and the Cubans in Florida should be, Cuban Americans in Florida should be very upset about what you just described there. And yet what Hillary Clinton does, as we see over and over again, is she does this misdirection. She comes in and makes an allegation, false allegations about Trump or whatever, of something of a very minor nature to take away the fact that they have created this situation where people, they say we've taken down the barriers, and yet they've established a partnership with that authoritarian regime is what they've actually done.
Yeah, by the way, I don't think this moves the Cuban vote an iota. These are very informed people.
Yeah, I think so too.
The older Cubans, I think, are motivated by the issue of Castro and the embargo. The younger Cubans are not. To them, Fidel Castro, who's he? Isn't he a funny old man with a beard and a cigar? Yesterday, I spoke to a very respected Cuban-American Democratic pollster.
Hang on, save that till after the break. We're talking to Roger Stone, Stone Cold Truth, and we'll be right back. Roger, you were just talking before we went to the break. We were talking about Cuba and how Hillary Clinton is making a very feeble play for the Cuban vote, trying to get them upset about sanctions, implying that a third party that was alleging that a third party that was tangentially involved with Trump had tried to do something in violation of the embargo that we had there, ignoring the fact, of course, that even if that were true, Terry McAuliffe, the governor of Virginia, the person who was a former chair of the DNC, same position that Debbie Wasserman Schultz has had to cover for Hillary Clinton, he ran Bill Clinton's reelection campaign. He ran Hillary Clinton's 2008 campaign. He went directly himself to Cuba to try to set up business deals while the embargo was in place and was essentially thrown out. But she brings this up even as we see them violating the sanctions, committing felonies in Iran. But you had some information about the Cuban vote in Florida. I'm very concerned to see what's going on there because that is a must-win state for Donald Trump as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think this makes much difference, in all honesty, even though it was plastered on the front page of the Miami Herald. An independent consulting firm, which Trump does not have any interest in, made an exploratory trip to Cuba to look into doing business there. They were notably unsuccessful. At some point, Trump reimbursed this company. I really don't know why. So Trump never did any business in Cuba, and he may not have even understood the implications of reimbursing a consultant that he had hired to look for business opportunities around the globe. But a very respected Democratic consultant, pollster, pardon me, who is himself Hispanic, someone I have enormous respect for, tells me that Trump has reached 34% of the vote among Hispanics, that there was no drop just in Florida, that there was no drop in his support. Now, Romney topped out in Florida at 28.5. So 34 would be sufficient for Trump to carry the state. And indeed, I think he's a couple points ahead. It's important to understand that the Hispanic vote in Florida is not monolithically Cuban. In fact, the greater portion of Hispanic voters in Florida are Puerto Ricans, Colombians, and so on, and they are habitual, traditional Democrats. If Trump could hold a third of the Hispanic vote, which he's getting today, that will be sufficient to carry the state. Now, one of the concerns I have is that the targeting foisted on the Trump campaign by the Republican National Committee is designed to help Marco Rubio get reelected, but does not include white Union Democrats in the central and southern part of the state who are Trump supporters. They would probably vote Democratic down ballot. So the Trump campaign needs to understand that they're being given a Mickey and that they need to use their own targeting to reach voters who are likely to vote for Trump, not Trump and the entire Republican ticket.
Let's talk about the steal the vote issue, because you're involved in that in terms of looking at the election, monitoring the election, looking at the tricks that are being played. And we just mentioned Terry McAuliffe, governor of Virginia, who has worked very hard to try to get felons the right to vote in Virginia, believing that they're going to vote for the new felon-in-chief, Hillary Clinton. But we've also seen just this last week in Harrisonburg, Virginia, a small town of 50,000 people, we saw 20-plus people who were dead registering to vote. That only came to light because a person in this small town was looking at the names and happened to notice one of the names being a deceased judge. So wait a minute, this guy's dead. Started looking at the list in detail and found 20 dead people there. But of course, we're told all the time, whether it's in North Carolina or Virginia or other places, don't worry, we shouldn't have any voter ID. That is simply racist to have a picture ID. We have picture ID for everything that we do with the government. But talk to us about the concerns that you have for stealing the vote, what people can do to monitor this on Election Day.
Yeah, I mean, you need a photo ID to get on an airplane in any airport in the United States.
That's right.
Is that racist? I'm not sure I understand. But look, President Barack Obama tells us that voter fraud literally does not exist. That is absurd. Excellent report on Fox the other night with Brett Baer, focusing on 4 or 5 people who voted in 2 states on the same day. They would vote in Indiana and then drive to Wisconsin and vote again. So, of course, it exists. But it's important to understand the distinction between voter fraud, people not registered to vote, people voting in the place of dead people, people voting multiple times, and election rigging. That is the electronic manipulation of the computerized voter machines that we know Hillary did during the Democratic primaries in at least 12 states, according to an authoritative study at Stanford University. I think this is a great danger. This is why we started stopthesteal.org. I asked people to go there and volunteer for our exit poll program, because the only way we can ensure the integrity of this election is with scientifically conducted exit polls in certain pre-selected key precincts in key counties in key states where we suspect that there will be shenanigans. If the results of the machines do not match roughly the results of the exit polling, in other words, if there's a wide swing, you have evidence of voter fraud and a basis on which Trump could challenge the legality and the outcome of this election.
And that's very important because we've seen this happen throughout Central and South America. Just in Brazil, we just had the female president there impeached. She was very unpopular. She was behind 10 points in the poll, and then they had a lot of electronic voting machines. And on the day they had the election, they decided that on that particular day, they weren't going to have the organization that does exit polling participate. So they just took a powder, and she handily won. And we've seen this throughout Central and South America, and yet we see this company, Smartmatic, which is the largest electronic voting machine company. They were brought in by the GOP in Utah to run their primaries. Our people at the top, both Republican and Democrat in the United States, are bringing in these electronic voting machines everywhere. That's something that really concerns me. And of course,
and interestingly, David, these companies keep quickly changing names. As soon as their machines are identified, so Diebold, which supplies the machines, for example, in both Florida and Ohio, they've changed their name to Premier Election Services.
Yeah, exactly. That's all the time we've got. Thank you for joining us. Roger Stone, StoneColdTruth.com. Thank you, Roger.